Somewhere around your eighth or ninth losing trade in a row, something shifts. It is not the losses themselves that do the damage, it is the story that grows around them. The story that says the losses are about you, that they reveal something permanent about your relationship with this market, your judgment, your fundamental suitability for this profession, that they are not a streak at all, but a verdict. And once that story is running in the background of every trade you place, you are no longer trading the market, you are trading the story. And the story always wins, because you wrote it, and you believe it, and every new loss arrives as confirmation of something you already decided was true. A losing streak ends not when the next trade wins. It ends when you stop treating the streak as evidence. And the 5 rules I am going to give you today are the specific mechanisms that make that shift possible, not as a philosophical aspiration, but as a practical reality you can operate from starting with your next session. But before the rules, I need to tell you something about losing streaks that almost no one in trading education will say directly, because it complicates the story they want to sell you. A losing streak does not mean your strategy is broken. I know how obvious that sounds when I say it sitting here. I know it does not feel obvious when you are inside one, when the screen is showing you red number after red number and your account is smaller than it was when you started and the doubt is so loud you can barely hear yourself. Think. When you are inside a losing streak, the pattern recognition machinery in your brain, the same machinery that makes you capable of reading a chart at all, is working against you. It is treating the sequence of losses as a signal. It is asking, what does this pattern mean? And the brain will find an answer. It always does. It will construct a narrative from what is, statistically speaking, entirely random variance, and that narrative will feel exactly as solid and credible as the best technical read you have ever made on a chart. It will feel true, and it will be wrong. In any system with a 60% win rate, a run of 8 consecutive losses is statistically predictable if you trade the system long enough. In a system with a 55% win rate, it is almost guaranteed to happen multiple times per year. The streak is not aberrant. The streak is part of the system's natural behavior. The question is not whether the streak is real. It is absolutely real. The losses are absolutely real. I am not asking you to pretend otherwise. The question is what you believe it means. And the answer to that question, more than the losses themselves, is what will determine whether this streak ends your trading or deepens your understanding of it. These 5 rules were not given to me from a book or a mentor, though I read the books and I had the mentors. They were extracted from my own failures across more losing streaks than I want to count, from watching other traders go through the same fire, from the slow and painful process of identifying exactly what separates the traders who make it through the hard stretches intact from the ones who do not. Each rule is precise. Each one addresses a specific psychological error. And each one, applied consistently, builds a piece of the infrastructure that makes consistent profitability possible on the other side of whatever streak you are currently in. Rule 1. Separate the process grade from the outcome grade, completely and permanently. After every trade, every single trade, win or lose, you give yourself 2 scores in your journal. The first score is the outcome grade. Did the trade produce a profit or a loss? And how much? You record it. You do not ignore it. The outcome is real, and it matters to your account. The second score is the process grade. Did you do what your plan said you would do? Entry conditions, position size, stop placement, exit criteria. Did you execute according to the rules you established before the session? Before you were under the emotional influence of watching price move against you? These 2 scores are recorded separately. They are never combined into a single evaluation. They are never allowed to inform each other. This is not a journaling technique. This is a fundamental reorientation of how you evaluate yourself as a trader. A losing trade with a perfect process score is a good trade, not a comfortable trade, not a painless trade, a good trade, one that adds clean data to your sample and keeps your edge intact for the next execution. A winning trade with a poor process score is a bad trade, one that tells you nothing useful except that markets sometimes reward bad decisions, which is the worst possible lesson you can absorb. Do not let the market teach you through its rewards. Let it teach you through the data generated by your consistent execution of your process. I started keeping these double scores during one of the hardest stretches of my trading life. 3 weeks of consistent losses, nothing dramatic enough to blow the account, but steady enough to make everything feel uncertain. I was questioning the strategy, the market conditions, my own ability to read price action. And when I went back through those 3 weeks and scored every trade separately, process separate from outcome, I found something that stopped me cold. My process scores were high, consistently high. I was entering when my plan said to enter, sizing correctly, managing the trades according to the rules I had established. The losses were not the result of poor execution. They were the result of variance in a system that, as far as the objective data could tell me, was still intact. And that discovery that the problem was not my process, but my interpretation of what the outcomes meant was the specific beginning of what eventually became real, sustainable profitability. Because here is what it did to the story I had been running. The story said the losses revealed something broken in my ability to trade, but the process score said I had been doing my job correctly. Both things could not be true. When I had to choose between the story and the data, I chose the data. Not with certainty, I did not feel certain. I felt scared, but with intention. The data gave me something solid to stand on, that the fear could not dissolve. And in trading, a place to stand is everything. You do not need to feel calm. You need one true thing. Rule 2. Define your edge in writing before you ever need it. This sounds obvious. Almost no one does it. Most traders could describe the setups they prefer, the conditions they like to trade in, the general shape of the moves they are trying to capture. But a genuine edge definition specific enough, testable enough, that you could hand it to a complete stranger and they could implement it exactly the way you would, almost nobody has that written down. And without it, a losing streak will take your edge from you. Because when the losses come and the emotional pressure builds, the first thing the frightened mind does is start renegotiating. It starts adding conditions to make losing setups feel like exceptions. It starts subtracting rules that seem to be the source of the problem, and before long, you are not trading your edge anymore. You are trading a constantly revised, emotionally authored version of something that used to be an edge and has now been edited into incoherence by the streak itself. The written edge definition is the anchor. It is the document you return to when the losses are making everything feel negotiable. It says, "This is what I do. This is the precise condition under which I enter a trade. This is the specific position size relative to account equity. This is the stop criterion. This is the exit." If the losses are occurring inside that definition, if I am executing the edge correctly and producing negative results, that is information about variance, not information about the edge. If the losses are occurring outside that definition, if I am taking trades that do not meet the criteria because I am impatient, afraid, or trying to recover something that is information about my execution, and the fix is to return to the definition, not to revise it under emotional duress. Write the edge definition today. Before you trade tomorrow, not a vague description, a precise operational specification. Entry conditions, one by one. Position sizing formula. Stop placement logic, exit criteria. All of it in writing, in enough detail that a stranger could follow it. Then put it somewhere you will see it before every session, not to read it like scripture. To use it as the objective reference point that your emotional state cannot rewrite. Rule 3. Do not reduce position size in response to losing. I need to be careful here because this rule has a boundary condition that matters. If your position sizing was not disciplined before the streak began, if you were already oversized relative to what your plan specifies, then the streak is giving you real information about risk management and you should address it. But if you were trading with appropriate, planned, consistent size before the losing began, then reducing your size because of the losses is the psychological equivalent of pulling the emergency brake in the middle of the highway. You are not making yourself safer. You are teaching your nervous system that losses are signals to retreat, which is the opposite of the relationship with risk that a professional trading mind requires. The size reduction feels like prudence. It feels like the responsible adjustment a sensible person makes when results are negative. It feels like protecting what remains. What it actually is, in a system with a genuine edge that is experiencing variance, is a vote of no confidence cast at the moment your edge most needs your confidence. Because the next winning trade is coming. You do not know when. The probability distribution does not announce it. And when it comes, if you have cut your size in half because you were afraid, the recovery is half the size it should have been. You have made the hole harder to climb out of, not easier. You have allowed the losing streak to influence your position sizing, which is the single variable your edge requires you to keep consistent to actually work across a large sample. Hold the size, follow the written rules, execute the process, let the distribution do its work. Now I need to stop here for a moment, because there is something I have not said yet, and I think it is the most important thing in this conversation. Not the most important rule, the most important truth. The one that, when I finally understood it, changed not just how I managed losing streaks, but how I understood the entire architecture of this business. And it has nothing to do with losing. It has to do with winning. The losing streak almost ended me. I have been honest about that. But what nearly destroyed my career permanently was not the losing streak itself. It was what came after it. When the losses turned and the wins started coming cleanly, consecutively, with the momentum that makes you feel like you have finally cracked something, like the confusion and the doubt were a phase you have moved through and left behind. I did what almost every trader does in that situation. I expanded. I sized up. I stopped being as selective about setups because the setups were working. I extended my trade limit because the trades were producing. I gradually, invisibly, stopped following the rules that had gotten me through the losing streak and generated the winning one in the first place. And 6 weeks later, I had given back most of what I made. I was staring at the same screen with the same sick feeling I had lived in during the worst of the losses. And sitting there, looking at the numbers, I understood something I had never fully understood before. I had never actually believed in my edge. I had believed in the winning streak. And believing in a winning streak instead of your edge is exactly as dangerous as fearing a losing streak instead of understanding it. They are the same broken relationship with outcomes, wearing different clothes. Fear of losing and the intoxication of winning are both forms of the same psychological error. Letting the results dictate the process, instead of letting the process generate the results. They are the same mistake expressed in opposite emotional directions. Rule 4. Define your rules for winning streaks with exactly the same precision you bring to losing ones. Every trader I have ever worked with had some version of a drawdown rule. When losses reach this level, I reassess. When losses reach that level, I reduce risk or step away. But almost none of them had the equivalent rule for profitable runs. What happens when you're up 40% in 6 weeks? What happens when you have won 10 of your last 12 trades and the account feels electric and the confidence is real and the setups all feel obvious? Do you stay with standard sizing? Do you reassess your edge definition to make sure you are still trading what the plan says, not what the winning streak has quietly told you is acceptable? Do you take a day off to let the emotional heat of winning cool down before you sit down again? If you do not have written answers to those questions before the winning streak starts, the streak will answer them for you. And it always gives the same answer. More size, more trades, more certainty that this time you have unlocked something. More exposure to a market that has not changed at all, that is still probabilistic, that will eventually draw from the other side of the distribution and take back everything the euphoria spent. Write the winning streak rules. Put them next to the losing streak rules in the same document. Treat 4 consecutive wins with the same disciplined examination you bring to 4 consecutive losses. Not because winning is dangerous in itself, winning is the point, obviously, but because euphoria is the specific emotional state in which the rules that protect you feel the most unnecessary. And rules that feel unnecessary are the ones that get quietly set aside. Set them aside during a winning streak, and you will spend the subsequent losing streak trying to recover what the euphoria cost you. I have done it. I have watched traders I respected do it. The pattern is so consistent, it might as well be its own rule of the market. Rule 5. Trade the next trade as if the last 20 trades never happened. Not as if they did not matter, they matter enormously as data in your process scoring and your edge evaluation. But as emotional input into the next decision, as the raw material the story runs on, as the invisible weight that colors your read of the next setup before you have even seen it as all of that, they are interference. The next trade needs to be evaluated on its own merits, against the written edge definition, with the same process first intention you would bring to it if your account were perfectly flat, your recent history were a blank page, and this were the first trade you had ever placed with this strategy. The setup either meets the criteria or it does not. The size is either what the plan specifies or it is not. The execution either follows the rules or it does not. This is the hardest rule to actually live by, because the human mind is not designed to evaluate the present independently of recent history. It is designed to do exactly the opposite, to use patterns across time to predict the future. And that is a magnificent capability for almost every domain of human existence. In trading, In a probabilistic environment where recent history genuinely has no reliable predictive value for the next trade, it is the specific cognitive feature that will work against you if you let it run without a counterbalancing discipline. The next trade does not know about the last 9. The market does not know you are on a streak. The setup is what it is, independent of everything you experienced to get to this moment. So here is the practice that makes Rule 5 operational, that turns it from an idea you agree with intellectually into something you can actually stand on in the middle of a real session, under real emotional pressure. Before each session, write one sentence at the top of your journal. Just one. The sentence is, "This session begins at 0, not at wherever the account is. Not at however many wins or losses you have had in the last 2 weeks. At 0. The next trade is evaluated fresh. The next decision is made on its own terms. Not because you are pretending the history does not exist, it exists. It is in the journal, the data is real. But because you have made a deliberate choice not to let the history vote on the quality of the decision you are about to make. That choice, which is available to you before every single session, regardless of what came before, is the specific act of will that separates traders who can execute through variance from traders who cannot." I want to acknowledge something honestly before I close, because I think you deserve the full picture. These 5 rules are not easy to apply in the middle of an actual losing streak. The process grade feels almost insulting when the outcome grade is a string of zeros. The written edge definition feels like a piece of paper instead of a lifeline when the system is losing consistently. The instruction to hold position size feels reckless when everything in your nervous system is screaming to protect what remains. And the direction to start each session at 0 feels impossible when the weight of recent losses is the first thing you feel when you wake up in the morning. I know that weight. I have sat in it for days at a time, and I want to tell you what actually got me through those periods, because it was not a moment of clarity or an insight that dissolved the difficulty. It was the accumulation of small decisions, each one marginally better than the one I would have made without the framework. Not perfect decisions, better ones. The decision to score the process even when the outcome was terrible. The decision to look at the written edge definition even when I felt certain it was failing. The decision to hold the size even when the fear said to cut it. The decision to write 0 at the top of the journal even when 0 felt dishonest, given the weight of what the account had just been through. Each decision was hard in the moment. None of them felt significant or heroic. Together, across enough trades and enough sessions, they were the specific actions that kept me executing a real edge long enough for the market's own probability to express itself. Because that is ultimately what consistent profitability is. It is the result of executing a real edge consistently enough across a large enough sample that the long-run expectation of the system has room to show up in the results. The losing streak is the variance between you and that result. The 5 rules are what keep you executing long enough to get there. This is the work, not the discovery of a better strategy, not the accumulation of more capital, not the achievement of emotional invulnerability to losses. The work is building and maintaining the psychological infrastructure that allows you to keep executing your process correctly across variance, through the losing streaks and through the winning streaks, through the doubt and through the euphoria. Through the mornings when it feels like you have no business doing this, and the afternoons when you feel like you have finally figured it out. The traders I have watched build lasting profitability are not the ones who found a way to avoid the streaks. They are the ones who built a framework like these 5 rules and used it to stay themselves through the streaks. The market did not change for them. They changed in relation to the market. And that change is available to you starting with the next session. Write the rules down. Score the process separately from the outcome. Define the edge before you need it. Hold the size through the noise. Write the winning streak guidelines before the euphoria arrives. Start each session at 0. Do these things consistently, across enough trades, and the streak you are in right now, whatever it looks like, however long it has been running, becomes something different, not smaller. Different. It becomes the environment in which the professional trading mind is being built. And that mind is the only thing in this business that produces what you actually came here for. If this gave you something real to work with, something you can apply before tomorrow's session, not someday stay close to this channel. Every video here is built around the same commitment to depth and practical truth instead of comfort. Subscribe not for the algorithm, but because if you are doing this work in earnest, you deserve content that meets you at the level the work actually requires. Come back. The next conversation is waiting when you are. And I want to leave you with one last thought. because it is the one that has stayed with me longer than any technique or framework I have ever developed. Every trader who ever achieved real, sustainable consistency went through a period that looked, from the inside, exactly like what you are experiencing right now. The doubt, the questioning, the losses that feel like they are saying something about you personally. Every single one of them. The framework did not spare them the experience. It gave them the tools to move through it without letting it break the thing they were building. You are building something. The streak is part of the build. The rules are the tools. Keep going.